All right, my name is Patrick Dichter, and this is Ignore the Headlines.
All right, Patrick, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. You are you're definitely someone I wanted to have on the podcast. We've had a relationship for a while, which we can dig into kind of in your past life. But wanted to let you have the opportunity to introduce yourself, talk about your background a little bit and kind of what you're up to now.
Great. Well, I'm excited to be on the podcast, and I always love some of the content that you put out. So, my story is that I bought last year an accounting firm that specializes in working with small business. So at AppleTree, we do bookkeeping and tax services for small businesses with 1 to 30 employees. And prior to that, I worked at a digital marketing startup for 7 years in a sales role. And then I spent 3 years doing small business advising. And here we are.
Yeah. And you and I connected when you were kind of in that more advisory, kind of consultative type role,
Right.
from kind of some shared interests. And, what I really want to talk to you about is you've now bought a business that really wasn't truly aligned to what you were doing previously. And some people do that, some people don't. You chose to buy a business that wasn't really specifically aligned to your expertise. You're a smart guy. I'm sure you have financial acumen, for sure. But want to kind of open up with, why did you make that choice at a high level? What made you comfortable with that? And we'll kind of continue on past that.
Sounds great. So the origin of how I came to really focus my search on bookkeeping companies started at the advising company. So at Cultivate Advisors, we were, kind of business coaches and consultants for small to mid-sized businesses. And most new clients who came in had just terrible bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And we'd always be referring it out.
Yep.
And I just saw how transformative that was to have great, clean books and to be able to, do cash flow planning and know what your margin is and really start to unpack that data,
Yeah.
So in the meantime, keep referring it out. I hear about, search funds and entrepreneurship through acquisition. And I was like, okay, what are my strong suits? I'm good at sales. I'm good at working with small business. And, obviously SaaS is an amazing category, but I'm not a technical person. So I kind of wrote that one off because I didn't think I could buy a big enough SaaS deal.
Totally.
It'd be a small one with a lot of technical risk.
Yep.
And so I had a background in marketing agencies, but the more I explored and looked at bookkeeping and started to really research that and look into it, I got more and more excited for multiple reasons. Obviously it's asset light, there's recurring revenue, there's healthy margin. I like the customers. I love working with small business. And not to pick on accountants, but they're kind of shitty operators, most of them can't get out of their own way and scale a business. And when I look at marketing agencies, I just think there's better operators there, and the client isn't as sticky,
Yeah.
So that's what led me to it. And the more I looked at it, the more excited I got. And I thought, if I can acquire a company that already has decent systems, I can focus on sales and grow the revenue and go from there.
Yeah. So you were interested because you saw this as a problem in your old role. So there was kind of in a way attached, and you were dealing with small business, which is now your client base. So that is actually that's interesting, right? So that's maybe even a third or fourth type of option is, hey, I'm not buying a business that's exactly in my wheelhouse, but the clients are kind of the same. The people
Right.
that I'm dealing with, that's interesting. And I'm sure that's helped as you've, how long have you been? Is it about a year?
Yeah, 7-8 months now.
8 months. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure that helped the transition. But the interesting thing is you understood that problem and the service, and it's not like a mind-blowing business.
Right.
We understand, most people get the basic ins and outs of bookkeeping, but you didn't really know the business of bookkeeping yet.
Right. Correct. And for me, it still feels like a leap. And then I think of these, search funders that are like former private equity or investment guys from like New York or California, and they go buy some obscure manufacturing company in Iowa, or like some plumbing company in, like who knows where.
Right.
And that's got to be an even bigger, shift into the unknown in terms of like not knowing the industry and just a different type of workforce. It's still been a roller coaster for me of just like learning what our lane is in accounting versus other firms.
Right.
And leading accountants, versus other types of people that I'm used to working with.
Yeah. And has there been in those 8 months kind of a surprise, positive or negative of, I perceived X, but actually when I got into this, it was Y, and I kind of missed it, good or bad?
Yeah, there's been a few. I thought tax was more black and white than it is. It is very, very gray, I've had situations
for anyone listening, Patrick's not advocating, for anything illegal. Okay. So it's just, not financial advice here, but it's, it can be in the gray area. Okay. Continue.
Well, yeah, I mean, the tax code is very gray, right? So
sure.
I've had situations where, multiple CPAs will like look at it completely different ways, and that's CPAs, let alone if like you get a tax attorney involved, which they tend to be more creative and aggressive, right? And then it's up to the accountant to like deal with it afterwards. So that's been a big surprise. I think the other big surprise is just how many different flavors of accounting there are, and how important it is to like stay in your lane. Because at first I was like, I could, serve this type of client or add, this feature, or like get into, fractional CFO, or like serve these different industries.
Right.
And if you're really trying to grow and scale a firm, it's hugely important that you work with similar type of size industry. You keep your tech stack the same, versus, trying to be everything to everyone. So that's been a huge learning for me. Those are the ones that are sticking with me right now.
Yeah, sure. So you and I were both recently at the Holdco conference. Shout out. Thank you, Kelsey and John. And I think you had a chance to speak with him. There was a guy that has a similar business to yours that he bought. Don't need to say his name necessarily, but and I think that you've spoken. I think you talked there a bit. You're both tall, and and so I'm short, and I own it. You guys, you were like towering over everyone. Like walked in, was like, wait, who is that? Oh my gosh. That's Patrick. You're like, what are you, like 6'7"?
I'm like 6'4", 6'5".
Oh, okay. Well, it's just, I don't know. That's just how short I am. So anyways, he and I had an interesting conversation around labor, and around team, about using, in this specific type of business, overseas talent or not. And so I'm curious, both before, as you were thinking about acquiring, how you might have been thinking about labor and team, and maybe how you think about it now, whether it's the same or different.
Yeah. I'll give you a long answer. There was a podcast with Nick Huber, where he was talking about their playbook when they acquire storage units, right? And they're like, you buy it for a certain price, you improve the efficiency, you offshore customer service, and you end up picking 10 to 20% more profitability. They refi, rinse and repeat, right? Obviously we can't refi, but I was like, I just want to follow the same playbook with accounting firms. You buy it, you improve it a bit, you offshore some stuff, and like you just keep rolling. And that's not my plan at all anymore. So the firm that I bought is all New England based talent. We serve clients nationwide, but I do plan to offshore some tasks eventually, but the thing I've seen with our team is just that freaks them out, of like, okay, what is my role then, or where's my job security? So
Right.
I have to definitely, build trust and get a little bit of buy-in. And my approach in that is to take my current team and say, hey, I want to, help you move up in your career path and increase your income. And then we'll bring in offshore talent for these more junior level tasks.
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable in our industry.
Sure.
I've talked to a lot of people who have built offshore teams, and they say it's messy for a couple of years. When you first try to do it, it doesn't end up saving you money, and there's a lot of cleanup or a lot of time zone challenges where some of them have just stuck with U.S. based talent. But I think over time, you have to do it to stay competitive.
Yeah, that actually really resonates with me on communicating to current team about using, kind of offshoring certain tasks and controlling the narrative around that and saying, hey, let's go look at the, bottom from a highest and best use perspective, bottom 10 to 20% of your role, or, bottom 10 to 20% of kind of patterns and habits and tasks that we have internally, see if we can, especially when you get to a certain scale, kind of move that off onto other people. So I think that makes sense long term. We heavily utilize offshore resources and team members in a few of the different portfolio companies at several, and I really enjoy it. And what's been surprising for me, honestly, just being biased, is sometimes people are way more talented than I was expecting and are capable of far more. So that'll be an interesting thing for you to navigate if you come across that and you're like, man, these margins, essentially be better. And some of these people are more impressive and just able to do more than I thought. And that'll be a fun journey for you to navigate. But I get you want to protect the team that's there and the people that the business was built around.
Yeah. The other thing that's a little different for us is our staff accountants interact with the client a lot, and they help with, some of the roles that the tax manager has to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit harder to offshore than just like a very entry level bookkeeper. So, but in time, I think there's amazing talent overseas, and it'd be silly not to leverage it.
Sure. So I want to transition to talk about tuck-ins or other acquisitions, and you feel free to say or not say whatever you want. So, especially if we go backwards before you bought the business that you bought, in your perspective, again, you're kind of coming into the industry, had some, some exposure, obviously, to this world, but now that you're in it, has your perspective and knowledge and kind of, what informs your decision making around this changed? Or you realize, hey, the way I was thinking about it before, while I was just thinking about buying this business, now I'm in it 8 months. Has that been affected at all as it relates to acquisitions or tuck-ins?
Yes. So when I first bought AppleTree, we were doing about 1.2 million, and my goal still is to get to about 5 million in 5 years. And my original thought was maybe like 1 or 2 tuck-ins per year. And after 3 or 4 months, I was like, okay, these tuck-ins won't make sense unless it's a perfect fit. And back to what I was saying earlier of like, they got to be similar clients, similar tech stack, similar team. Otherwise, just the pain of integration isn't worth it for the cost that you're going to pay, right? Because you could acquire another accounting firm for $1 million for $1 million in revenue, like a 1x basically, but you might not want half of those like kind of small old clients that they have versus we're growing organically at a pretty decent clip, and just the capital allocation is just it on the surface. It just looks more efficient to grow organically unless it's really good fit. So all that being said, I'm under LOI on 2 deals. So
okay,
yeah.
Curveball.
So one of them is one of them's smaller, and it's exact same style of practice that we are. And it's friend of the guy I bought from,
Mm.
and then the other one is a pretty niched modern firm that is well run and very profitable. So it just made sense to try to go after that at the time.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Two more questions along the lines of acquisitions. One is, do you think you have gotten to the place, or in the future, do you expect that you could get to the place where, let you said numbers. So I'll say, let's say even after some acquisitions, now you're sitting at 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
Do you foresee a point where you could go buy a business that's doing 5? Like, could you buy up market above where you sit? And do you think that you could, complete that with excellence? Or do you always feel like you probably need to buy smaller than where you're currently at? I've heard a lot of different takes on this. I'm curious yours.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say, the small deals aren't even worth it, and you should just go for something similar to your size.
Right.
Honestly, I get some imposter syndrome when I'm like, okay, if I were to go buy something twice our size and then just try to go be like some wartime visionary CEO, they'll be like, okay, who's this guy?
Right.
And like, why are we joining them? That's my initial reaction, is that it feels a little daunting to go in and take over a larger firm. And I just wonder if our culture would be, if you can really merge those,
Right.
if you're the smaller acquirer.
Yeah.
But
I think a lot of it has to do with process, operational excellence. To me, it's what it comes down to. And if you really have that and you're buying something that's similar enough, I think it's achievable, but it doesn't mean it's not scary. So it's my take.
yeah.
All right, last kind of acquisition related question. So we're both at Holdco Conference. My favorite people that I heard speak were the Chenmark squad. Just
Right.
blew me away. And I'm like total fanboy now. And they have 9 businesses. 2 of them are Canadian, and which really surprised me, actually. And it kind of actually opened my eyes, and it's like, oh man, I haven't even thought about this. Like,
Yeah.
I know some Canadian. My wife's Canadian. Like, I'm sure I can buy a business in Canada. No sweat. It's easy. I'm sure it's so easy.
Right.
Is that down the road? Could you even imagine that? Or is it like, there's so many good businesses that I could buy that are just like me in the US, like why even worry about that? Or would you think actually about buying in another country? Canada is probably the quote unquote easiest, but like, would you even consider it?
I hadn't thought about it until now, it seems, it seems wild to think of like going to acquire something in Canada or Mexico or overseas. But, obviously like some very, very sharp people at Chenmark saw that it, could be worth it.
Yeah.
You definitely, I'm living in the SBA world, right? Which is very cheap, affordable debt. So you'd have to cash flow or get some traditional lending there.
Right.
But I also think like you could maybe pick up some arbitrage if you picked up Canadian talent. When I was looking at accounting firms, there was a accounting firm in Canada that focused on tech and startups, and they were just starting to come into the U.S. And that was part of what I was considering was if you can find really good Canadian talent for 60 cents on the dollar, and then pick up U.S. clients, that's just a massive advantage. So that could be an angle that would definitely make it worth it,
Yeah, that's a really interesting point I hadn't thought about. On the talent side, I think the challenge there would be that tax code's pretty different in certain spots.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, congratulations. And I also, kind of the original topic, is really buying in an industry that you didn't previously have immense expertise in. Mm-hmm. And to me, that should be encouraging to people, and it should open up people's perspective, and kind of from an opportunity, almost think of it as like a TAM, right? So my total addressable market of acquisitions really opens up if I get more comfortable with buying in an industry that I may not have significant expertise in, or even in your case, like licensing or, credentials. So
Right.
I think that's really cool. And for me, it grows the appetite of, technically I just could buy anything, why not?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, really cool that you've done that. And it seems like you're doing
Thanks.
excellence.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It's funny to think of, I was really focused on one industry versus, a lot of searchers, they'll look at 30 different industries, which I can't imagine trying to skill up and do your due diligence,
Right.
quickly on that. But I think at the end of the day, if you are acquiring a business that's, over 300 or 400K in SDE, it probably means that, there's some good systems or team in place, which should give you a little bit of sense that you don't have to be an expert in the craft, but, you can come in and operate and grow it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
awesome. All right. So we wrap up these episodes with something I call entertain the audience. So in case our conversation was super lame, you have to entertain the listeners to round us out. Something that you have watched, read, eaten, I don't care. Something you've consumed that you thought was super awesome that you want to share with those that are listening.
all right, entertain the audience. I think one thing from my personal story that everyone's like, what? You did what? That sort of relates to this journey was I sold door to door every summer in college, and it was like the best, worst thing that you never want to do again.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in Colorado, and you'd go to a different state for the summertime, and it was straight commission, 80 hours a week,
Oof.
living with a host family, cover your own expenses. Like,
Was this Southwest or Southwestern?
yeah. Southwestern. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I never run out of like crazy stories and just wild things that happened there. But I did that for 4 summers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you advocate for, because they still exist, I think they're still in operation. Like, would you advocate for college students to do that?
I would. I think it's so different now with like, everyone's so crazy with like anyone coming to their door, and they have Ring cameras and like Nextdoor and Facebook. Like, it's just hard, in today's social media age to get people to even like hear you out. But there's still, about 1,000 kids that do it every summer, and they do well. And I would advocate, because I think you can learn so much about sales and about yourself and controlling your attitude and motivation in such a short period of time at a young age versus, other summer jobs you might do. So
cool. Awesome. Well,
yeah.
Patrick, thank you for coming on. Ignore the headlines. Appreciate it. And I have a feeling that you're just going to keep taking over the world, bite by bite, and I wish you the best of luck at Appletree.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I appreciate our friendship, and we'll have to do this again soon.
All right, man. Thanks.
Bye.